What is up, ladies and gentlemen? In today's video, I have an interview that I'm doing with Dr. Rajdeep Mysore, who is a practicing dermatologist here in Bangalore. And I've met him a couple of times, and over the years, we've become friends. And just the other day, we were talking about things like the kind of trust that the public has in modern medicine and doctors, and about quackery and about influencers on social media talking about health. And so we both decided, okay, why not talk about it publicly in an interview like this, so the doctor can let us all know all his thoughts. And so without further ado, we'll begin. Dr. Rajdeep, is there anything else that you'd like to add to what I said?
First of all, thanks for calling me, Pranav. We've been planning this for a long time. So I think you've covered most of what we had discussed. Things that, doctors' point of view and patients' point of view. And, I think this would be a bridge. I mean, you'll be able to provide some perspective from the patient's point of view, and I'll be able to provide some perspective from a practicing doctor's point of view. So, these are the topics that we thought are important and that people are concerned about.
So let's get right into the topics that we plan to discuss, and starting with the big one, which is the public trust in modern medicine. What's your take on this whole thing? This is what they believe, that doctors prescribe expensive, sometimes unnecessary tests, medicines, treatments, etc. And sometimes pharmaceutical representatives, they incentivize doctors to prescribe their own medicines or the medicines of their company over standard treatment sometimes. And doctors, in an effort to make money or whatever, they might do that. They might give their biased opinions in their prescriptions also. How much of this is true? And what's your take on this whole thing?
First of all, let us address the public mistrust which is there in medicine in general. One of the reasons what you mentioned, which is also a large concern, is probably the money part of it. So what I have analyzed is there are different reasons for this public mistrust. Money is one of the things. There are other reasons as well. So I have been practicing medicine since 2009. So I finished my MBBS in 2009, and then we have a 1 year of rotatory internship. And we go through all the departments in this internship, and technically we are doctors from that point of view. So as a junior doctor, we have seen how things are, and then as a postgraduate doctor when I joined my dermatology, and now as a practicing private practitioner. So the first reason I feel that the public or the common man mistrusts modern medicine is that modern medicine is like any other complex science. So we see mistrust of science a lot everywhere. In all movies, scientists are villains. The big boss is usually some mad scientist or something like that. So medicine is also a complex science, and it's always evolving. And we have different systems of medicine in India. And the system of medicine that I practice, is called evidence-based medicine, or modern medicine we call it. There are some misnomers, I would say, like allopathy or Western medicine, which is not appropriate, because it's a consensus which is drawn by people all over the world. It's not just the West or the East. In this evidence-based medicine, the evidence is considered good evidence or poor evidence, or there are different grades of evidence in this. For example, if somebody tells you, I took this kashayam or something and it cured me, it might be his experience. We call it as anecdotal evidence. So anecdotal evidence has the lowest value. So it's somebody's personal opinion. And the highest value in this system of medicine would be randomized double-blinded control trials. And Pranav has made several videos about this. I really appreciate him trying to spread the scientific word, and which is why I wanted to have this discussion with him. So we see the level of evidence that is there for treatment of various diseases, and usually this evidence is gained by statistical study of vast populations. So if it's at an individual level, there might be biases, there might be variations. So we take large populations to cancel out these biases. So also several protocols are devised by bodies of doctors from across the world. So you can't call it as Western medicine. There are a lot of Indian doctors involved. Indian doctors are involved in medicine all over the world. And earlier we used to rely more on Western data because we didn't have much data. And we used to rely on Western literature. And as other countries like ours are developing and getting more money, there's more money going into research, and we now have a lot of Indian data as well. And Indian protocols are there. So various parts of the world have different organizations, and they reach some sort of consensus on the treatment. So this way of treatment works for a vast majority of cases, but there's individual variation as well. And this individual variation is usually addressed by the clinical doctors who sees that particular patient. So we assess each patient individually, and we use the data which we have from statistics to guide us. So these are guidelines. So it's not something that we blindly follow. There are variations from patient to patient. This is a complex process, and there are a lot of variables, and we may not be able to always convey the reason we have taken a particular decision properly to the patient. We always try to simplify it and explain it in a language which is easy for the patient to comprehend. And because it's a very complex science, there are sometimes where there are cases where we might not be able to find out what the problem is. There might be mistakes, but for a vast majority of people it works, and it works really well. And so I think the first mistrust comes from not understanding the complexities of the science. We try to draw parallels to more simple things and get the meaning completely wrong. So a very common mistake which we see is in quantum physics or particle physics, when they talk about the dual nature of light, the double slit experiment, they say that light can decide, it has its own intelligence, things like that. It's not like that. That's not the reason. So it exists in a wave form, and at that particular moment, if you're studying it, it can exist as a particle. But normally, for all practical purposes, it exists as a wave. We try to oversimplify things and draw parallels. And so we think we know this particular disease in this particular way, and the doctor is not explaining it in that way. So they'll say heat or cold, and then the doctor might dismiss them or laugh at them. And that's where the first step of mistrust comes. The second is, I think there are a very small percentage of people in general who are very distrustful of everyone and everything, and they have conspiracies, and so for whatever reasons, for whatever experiences they might have had in their life. So when they visit a doctor, they already have seen 2-3 other doctors, and they say no doctor has been able to cure me. You're the third person, fourth person, and it's a pretty straightforward problem most of the times. It's not a complex or rare condition, and they come prepared with a diagnosis in mind, with a treatment in mind, and they ask the doctor questions not to know about the disease, but they want to test their doctor's knowledge, whether you know about that disease, whether you know how to treat it. So that's again a small percentage. And the third reason, a very large reason, the can of worms is being opened. So the third reason is that when there's money involved, I mean, healthcare is a big thing. Doctors form a part of healthcare, and it's usually easy to point out to one person. So usually doctors take the blame for most of the deficiencies of our healthcare. So I think the first most important reason for this money coming into healthcare is that our public healthcare infrastructure is very poor. We all know that. Very few of us would go to a government hospital, and there are very few good government institutes. And most of these are at the central level. You might have AIIMS, or you might have PGI, or you might have NIMHANS in Bangalore. So there are very few institutes that are reputed, and most of the burden of healthcare in India falls on the private sector. The private sector has been able to provide very cheap, relatively very cheap healthcare compared to what we see in other parts of the world. So it's become, I think it caters to almost 80% of healthcare in India. This is the reason where money comes into the picture. So here in private healthcare, the doctor is investing, or the corporate hospital is investing, or there are some investors. And when somebody puts money into a particular thing, if they don't get the money back, they fail and they perish. If they have to get their money back, there are different ways of making money. So like what Pranav said, there'll be some pharma companies who will approach doctors and say, we'll give you this much incentive to write our product. Or there'll be a lab person who will approach and say that, we'll give you this much incentive to send it to our lab. And so mistrust again develops. Doctor starts thinking about how much money can I make from this patient. In government healthcare, the doctor is paid a fixed salary. Whether he sees 100 patients or 50 patients or 10 patients, there's no incentive. So that's again double-sided. So, the quality suffers. Incentives are important. But if incentives become the main goal, then it can affect the quality of healthcare. So both things are bad. One of the ways I think we can improve this is regulation. There is a lot of regulation. There are a lot of laws and other things which prevent this. And we know how poor the enforcement of regulation is. So you can again, there's so much corruption that even if you get caught with something, you can pay a bribe or something and get away with it. Corruption is one of the reasons why regulation is not working. And then the spending on public healthcare is very low in our country. So there are many reasons. So ever since independence, we have been, first we had to sustain our food, basic needs, and then we had hostile, neighbors. So Pakistan, China, and we always needed to have high defense budget. So healthcare would be like research, healthcare would be last priority. So this is one thing as well that needs to improve. And I think now that our economy is improving, there should be more focus on these things. So I think these are the three main big reasons for mistrust with doctors. The first thing being complexity of the science. The second being, patients being of a mistrustful nature as such. And the third most important thing is the involvement of money in private healthcare.
Related to this whole thing, I think because money is often involved, the cost of private healthcare goes up significantly. Like, what's your opinion on this? Like, isn't there a huge burden on the public that drives this mistrust further? Or, they might feel like they've gotten a bad deal, or they might feel cheated from how expensive healthcare is sometimes, private healthcare.
No, I don't agree with this. Yeah. So, like I told you, the private healthcare is very cheap in India. So, people who are in India don't know this. So, people who go, a lot of my patients who go to US or UK or any European country or the West, they realize how easy it is to meet even a specialist or a super specialist. They can just get up in the morning, book some appointment on some app, can do a video consultation. So, access is very easy. And even the consultation charges compared to the private sector there, you cannot even compare. It's more than 20 to 25 times costlier in the West. So it's not double the cost or triple the cost. It's about 20 to 25 times. So if a doctor here on average is charging about, let's say 500 rupees, it's about $150 to $200 for a private consultation. So the thing is, it's insurance plays a large role in the US. And in Europe, public healthcare is very robust. So the government puts a lot of money into public healthcare, so it's able to take care of these things. Here, the main reason is that health is not something people keep money aside for. It's an unexpected expense, and you save money for your house, you save money for your kids, you save money for education, but you don't save money for healthcare. So we take it for granted. As long as we are healthy and fine, we're like, we don't budget money aside for healthcare, and insurance to a large extent helps with this.
Again, I'm asking questions off script. We haven't planned these things, but I think these are important questions. And I think in the flow of this conversation, I feel these things are important to talk about. What's your opinion on the state of insurance, health insurance in India? For instance, you mentioned right now that in some countries in Europe, there's public healthcare, where the government, there are countries like the UK where patients can access healthcare free of cost. In India, that's not the case. What is your opinion on this? The state of insurance, should it be that way? Should it be another way, a different way? Like, do you have, what's your take?
When there's public healthcare, it has its own drawbacks as well. The main advantage, of course, is that people get free healthcare or subsidized healthcare to a large extent. But when you're dealing with the entire population, you have huge backlogs. So you have a waiting period of at least 3 months and sometimes even 6 months. And people here can visit us for anything. So it might be really insignificant. They might not require treatment. They might not require a consultation. So all these things are filtered out at various levels in public healthcare. So everyone doesn't have access to a specialist there. But anybody who's just walking on the road, sees the clinic board, can walk in and take a consultation with a specialist if they're free here. That's one of the drawbacks of having free public healthcare. It's important. If we have free public healthcare in India, people don't want to use it. It's not that we don't have it. Anybody can go to a government hospital, take a token, show to a doctor free of cost. You can go to Bangalore Medical College, you can go to St. John's. There are so many institutes. There are 12 medical colleges that provide free or subsidized healthcare just in Bangalore. But people don't want to go there because we know the problems. So I think in India, the problems of public healthcare and private healthcare are amplified.
So in your opinion, do you think India has good healthcare or bad healthcare, like in terms of accessibility and affordability and all these things, everything, and expertise also?
Again, it's public and private healthcare, two separate things. To a large extent, private healthcare covers most of us and addresses the concerns of most of the people here. And it's a good system because we know that people from different countries come to India, even from so-called most developed countries come to India because it's cheap. So we have this thing called medical tourism, right? So corporates are cashing in on this. They know that the patient can fly to India, get operated, have a holiday, go to Goa or go to Himalayas or whatever, see entire India and go back at the same price or a lower price than they would be spending in their own country. So the quality is good. Otherwise, we wouldn't get people from the more developed countries visiting us. And in general, to a large extent, I think most doctors in India care for their patients and don't cheat their patients to a large extent. There are of course exceptions everywhere. We are all human beings. We have all type of human beings in all professions.
Right. So let's now move on to different style of questions, different theme of questions. So let's say a patient is deciding between doctors A, B, and C. Is there a way that a patient can judge the competence of the doctors, like which doctor is the best, or who should I go to? All these things. Is there a way they can decide these questions?
When a patient is looking for a doctor, in most cases, they should get this thing out of their head that I want the best doctor. So every condition doesn't require the best doctor. And most of the doctors are above average. They are usually in the top 10% of their class in school, and they're the people who have been scoring consistently well, being studying, and dedicated individuals as well, who like to get knowledge and things like. So majority of the people who become doctors are smart enough to treat your condition in the first place to begin with. So you don't have to seek the best. So this best doctor thing is often an image which is created over years. So we know how politicians create their images. So they'll start with some backstory, they'll start with some. So the same thing is done for most of the big shot doctors. So big stories are created. They treat famous individuals. They get testimonials from various people. So don't always go looking for the best doctor. So for a majority of people, when you know what your condition is, if it's a fairly common condition, most of the doctors will be able to address your concerns. What do you see as a patient? The first thing you see is maybe qualifications of the doctor. So you will see where they have done their which college they have studied from. If you know which colleges are good, you might see which college they have studied from. Is it a private university or is it a government university? So government colleges are considered harder to get into, and private colleges there are a percentage of people who can buy a seat. They can pay a hefty sum and get their degree. But even though they get into that college, you have to have a certain level of competence to pass your exams. So it's not that everyone who has purchased an MBBS seat or an MD seat, and even in our college, I've seen quite a few students who have purchased the seat are on par with, or some of them even better than people who have got through merit. You cannot, generalize that, but to a large extent, if somebody is done in a government college, more likely they have come through merit on their own. And then there are other qualifications. So you have extra trainings, you have fellowships, and we give a lot of importance to foreign degrees. So anybody who's done some fellowship or some this thing, so this is where quackery comes into picture. So a lot of people just go do some course in UK or Germany or US just because they're big countries. They do some diploma course, some fellowship course, which may be recognized by some private university there, and that gives a lot of weightage. Patients are like, oh, he was abroad, he did this course, he did that course, but they might not even have a MBBS qualification or an MD qualification. It's again a double-edged thing. So largely you look at the qualifications of the doctors. The most important thing, what I see, what patients, how they assess their doctor is through word of mouth. So when someone's suffering from an ailment and is treated to their satisfaction, they share it with people around them. And to common man, this is the most important and quickest way. And often a person puts a good word about another person, and that time they have nothing to gain from it. So you understand that they must be telling the truth. So this word of mouth is the most common way that patients judge a doctor. And in the online era, I think reviews are becoming the new word of mouth. So you can tell it to a large group of people. Your experience with the doctor can be shared with a large group of people. So it's not just how they treat the disease. So it's the entire experience that's important to the patients these days. Before it would be like they won't mind. The doctor shouts at them or tells them just shut the fuck up and just follow whatever I've written, and patients used to just listen to that. Oh, doctor knows everything. So it's not the same now. So the experience the patient has with the doctor is important as well, not just the diagnosis and treatment.
And also they can use the years of experience that the doctor has in the field.
Correct. The years of experience is important as well. So, of course, this again becomes a problem for younger doctors who might be as good as treating most of the 90% of the common conditions, but their experience is less. So they might not be able to cater to a large number of patients.
Related to what we just talked about, there's an off-topic question. In your opinion, what's the state of medical education in India? Like recently, there was the NEET scam, right? Where entire educational life of a student has completely gone for a toss. So, in your opinion, what is the state of medical education in the country today?
Yeah, you're asking me things which I actually have a lot of opinions on and very passionate about talking about. So I think this is a very bad thing. I mean, people who are struggling, lakhs of students who are struggling, who have dropped years preparing for exams, and then you have people who can just buy the question paper and get the rank. And we've seen it happening. It's been happening since. NEET is not new. So I know instances where people have got seats in central universities like AIMS, by some influence, by knowing some minister, some quota, some this kind of thing. So it's not just NEET. So we don't even get to know these things. So these things are, when we discuss with our colleagues, somebody is telling, उस minister का influence, I paid him some, 2 crores, 3 crores. My dad has some setting with him. My seat is arranged. And you know that these people are not even studying. They're not even able to clear their, MBBS level exams. And they get top ranks, and this is a very small percentage. Of course, it's a very, very, very small percentage, and to a large extent, I feel that students should not feel disheartened and feel betrayed. It's an extremely small percentage where this happens, and again, this is because of the rampant corruption in our country. Another point I'd like to add, and this might be controversial, but I don't think, this is my personal opinion, and I know a lot of people are going to hate on me for this, but I don't think at a higher level reservation is going to help. For people who are not privileged, who don't have access to good education, primary education, secondary education, and probably MBBS level, graduate level, education, there can be reservation for that. But at a postgraduate level, I think this is affecting us as well. So, reserve for local candidates, reserve for this caste, reserve for this community. So that's going to affect the quality of the professionals that we are producing. So recently, again, we have this very populistic move done by the government where they want to reserve Karnataka. So where they want to reserve 50% of the management jobs for local Kannada speaking people and 75% of the non-management jobs for Kannada speaking people. You're just going to ignore talent from all across the country just because they don't speak that particular language or because they're not from that particular community. So I think at a higher level, there should be no reservation.
Specific points about that, I might have disagreements with you also there.
Exactly. So I told you, this is my personal opinion. And I think that with reservation as well, there are a lot of deserving candidates. I've seen in my own batchmates, who have come through reservation. They're quite hardworking, and there are exceptions in that as well. There are people who have a lot of money and they just belong to some particular caste. So they just, they get a seat. So that's as bad as, buying the question paper. And I think a lot of times the deserving people don't get it. This is an issue.
So moving on, I want to ask you, when you come across or when you encounter a patient with some condition that you haven't seen, not just you, like the entire field hasn't really seen, or maybe it's a condition that's very under-researched, under-studied, what do you do in such cases?
As I was explaining earlier, we follow this system of medicine called evidence-based medicine. So for having evidence, we resort to statistical methods that involve large groups of people. And with rare diseases, we don't have such large groups. So we don't have sufficient statistics. The second thing is we must know what we are seeing. If you have never seen a condition, we might not be able to recognize it. For these rare conditions or things that are not being studied, we simply don't know what we are dealing with most of the time. So to overcome this, we use whatever tools we have at our disposal, so statistics is out of the window. So we can only use observation, right? So we observe what's going on with the patient, we record these observations, and we present these observations to our colleagues at conferences and other meetings. And these days we have internet platforms to share such rare cases and take opinion of colleagues from across the world. So we use collective knowledge of the medical community all over the world to discuss these conditions. Since these conditions require a lot of time and resources to understand and treat, the evidence for the treatment evolves very slowly because of this limitations of time and resources. If this condition becomes more common or more aggressive or more fatal, then obviously you have more data, so statistics comes into the picture, and you have more funding because more people are getting affected by it, and then it's likely to be solved at a faster rate.
Often we find people on social media giving health information. Sometimes they may be qualified, sometimes they may be actual doctors, but very often we see people with no medical qualifications who give out all this information, and the public might not be able to recognize that they are not an actual authority, or they might prescribe some authority based on their number of followers or whatever their social media standing and all these things. And because of that, they might take this information as being of some value when it's quite often wrong. What's your take on people giving out information on medicine on social media and stuff?
So, these social media influencers and, health influencers on social media, this is a worrying trend. Qualified people giving proper advice, it's fine, it's good, they're educating people, but there are equal number of, or probably more unqualified people or qualified people giving out wrong information. Right? So you've had informal information always available, right? So even before the internet, you have your auntie or uncle or some neighbor who will suggest some remedy and tell this cures this, that cures that. And with the advent of internet, it's just amplified. So the same people who are telling their neighbors or their family members are now able to reach a larger audience. So often with these kind of things, the loudest voice or the most confident voice is confused for competence. So somebody who's able to tell something with conviction is, believed. Many times there are intellectual people or, nerds. They're not very socially good. They find it difficult communicating with others, and they may not be able to put across the points to others. And they're often laughed at and, not taken seriously, even though they might have valid points to be discussing. So use your intelligence, whatever intelligence you have, use your discretion, try to understand whether that person is having some ulterior motive, or whether that person is qualified enough to talk about it, and don't blindly believe anyone.
Often what I see in people's decision making is that sometimes they might not get the solution or the resolution for their health that they want from modern medicine, and such people are quite often they're swayed by opinions of another friend or family member who may have taken treatment from some alternative medicine source or some quack, and swayed by their words, they might try to solve their non-resolution from modern medicine by going to this quack. Are there cases where that is a viable solution in your opinion, or is it always a bad idea?
So again, when people are not having a solution, which the mainstream is able to offer, they definitely try to look for an alternate thing. That's okay. So if they don't have a solution, looking for something else is fine. We should be open to anything that helps the patient. But the problem is when there is a solution and still they go looking for that alternative system. We saw, Steve Jobs not taking treatment for pancreatic cancer. He believed all sorts of... so this happens with the rich very often. We think that rich people have best access to healthcare. They have access, yes, but they don't listen to people who make sense because they don't tell them things that they like to hear. So they give them the facts and they don't want to digest those facts. I mean, people who have reached that level are usually people who have defied all odds. So they think they can defy these odds as well. So that happens. And then there are very poor people who don't have access. So treatment with chemotherapy or radiotherapy at a big hospital might cost a lot. So they might go to some traditional herbal medicine, which will be a fraction of the cost, and many of them, might be doing it even like on a charitable basis, doing it in some small village, things like that. So the super rich and the poor both are affected equally by this issue. But of course, if they're not finding a resolution with the modern system of medicine, then of course we should be open to try other forms of treatment. As a doctor, we should not be narrow-minded that only this works and this doesn't work, because we don't know, we might find evidence for it somewhere down the line.
So along the same thoughts, I just want to ask you what your general thoughts on alternative medicine, on quackery and all these, and also is there any one particular form of alternative medicine or quackery that you have a dislike for, or any other strong opinions about?
Quackery is something where a person is treating a condition that they're not supposed to, or they're not qualified to treat. So we have multiple systems of medicine in India, and we have Ayurvedic, homeopathic, Unani, Siddha, and then we have modern medicine, and then we have other branches like we have dentists, we have physiotherapists who also masquerade as physicians or surgeons, and treat conditions they shouldn't be treating. So in quackery there are different types. One is the quackery where an allied system of medicine, the doctor from an allied system is practicing as a general practitioner of modern system of medicine. So you have Ayurvedic or homeopathic doctors who are treating with modern medicines using paracetamol and using amoxicillin and using other these things. This is not necessarily bad, because these are the people who are catering to a large population, and increasingly we find lesser and lesser MBBS doctors who are willing to go to rural areas and smaller areas and work there. And we hardly see MBBS doctors. Everyone is doing MD these days. Nobody stops at MBBS. So the general practice void is being filled by these alternate medicine doctors. And they do have some understanding of diseases, they do have some understanding of the medication, and they're treating the diseases more technically. So you have a fever, you give this; you have a cough, you give this antibiotic; you have a stomach pain. So it's a symptomatic approach to treatment, which works for most of the cases in the primary healthcare or the general practice. Most of them know their limitations. They know what they can treat, they know what they can't treat, and they refer whatever they can't treat to other hospitals or other doctors. I think this is okay, and we need to adjust. This is our Indian jugaad to fill the gaps in primary healthcare. What ticks me off is people who have fancy clinics and these cosmetologists or these other dental people doing Botox and fillers, and nurses doing hair transplants, and you're not catering to the society, you're not catering to the problem. This is just money making, right? This is purely a business, and this is rampant in cities. So you have a lot of fancy centers without the qualification of doctors mentioned anywhere. So as a patient, you should look for registration from that medical council. So look for Karnataka Medical Council or whichever state medical council registration, or the MCI registration, or the NMC registration of the doctor. So that means that they are either MBBS or MD or practicing that modern system of medicine, or whatever system they are practicing, they adhere to that. We have Ayurvedic doctors as well who stick to Ayurvedic treatment, and they know that these are the conditions I can treat, I'm going to treat this, and they do a good job to a large extent. They won't have patients coming back to them otherwise. And several chronic inflammatory conditions are addressed well by some of the Ayurvedic treatments. But again, it's extrapolated. They try to treat many other conditions as well under the same bracket, and then we have side effects. Or they continue treatments for a very long time, and there's cumulative toxicities of Ayurvedic medicines as well. The thing is, the main beef I have with alternative systems of medicine is that when it works, they make a huge hue and cry of it, but the side effects are always brushed under the carpet. The thing I like about modern system of medicine is that we accept our mistakes to a large extent. We try to audit, we try to understand why these mistakes are happening, and we try to get better. Whereas in other traditional systems of medicine, they just say, yeah, this thing didn't work for you, and just brush it under the carpet and say, yeah, I've treated thousands of other people before, and this kind of thing. So it's more individual based treatment. It doesn't depend on statistics, and and a lot of lies are told as well. The disease will flare up and then it'll come out of your body. Then it'll settle down and things like that. So a lot of unscientific things are there, but for some conditions it helps. It does help. For some maybe benign chronic inflammatory conditions, they can try other systems of medicine.
Yeah, doctor, I think that's all the questions I had. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
That's about it, Pranav. You've given me an opportunity to voice my thoughts, to discuss about burning issues in healthcare, and I thank you for that. And I hope your channel does well, and I hope you continue to educate people about science and logic and things like that. This is very important because the loudest voice wins today. It's not the most logical voice.
Thank you for your time, doctor. Thanks for speaking with me. I'll leave his details in the description and also in the title. Dr. Rajdeep himself is also a content creator. He has a channel. I'll leave that.
Nothing like yours. So it's a very, very tiny, not a professional content creator, but I try.
So, yeah, doctor, anything else? All the details you can just give me. I'll add it to my description. But yeah, that's it. I think this was a great podcast. I think we talked about a lot of topics, and I think a lot of these questions were directly from my audience. I asked them what are the questions you want to ask the doctor, and these are some of the things that they wanted to ask. And I think we had a great conversation also. So if that's all, if there's nothing else, we can end it here.
Thank you, Pranav. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day, doctor. See you guys. Bye.